Welcome back to Midnight Viewing, the horror anthology. Wait a minute. Actually, I need to welcome you to a separate but equal Midnight Viewing. This is Midnight Viewing Anthologies Attack, where we discuss anthologies in all the various media and genres. And sharing the Midnight View with me is the director of the award-winning live-action cartoon Space Detective, Mr. Antonio Llapur.
Hey there, Father Malone. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. We just were talking about Batman without recording. That was really dumb, but that's just how
That's how it goes, man. You get excited, you're like, hey.
dedicated to the Bat. And in tonight, our inaugural outing, we've chosen two absolutely certified anthology classics. Starting back in 1992, we are doing two episodes from Batman the Animated Series, Almost Got 'Em and Legends of the Dark Knight. Now, I say that they're from Batman the Animated Series, and they've certainly been folded into the Batman Animated Series. If you were to stream it now, available on Max, everybody, go check it out. Actually, go watch it right now and then come back, because we're going to be spoiling the shit out of these things. These are two. The second episode, the Legends of the Dark Knight, is actually from the new Batman Adventures from 1997, which ran for one season, maybe? Two? I don't know. And has now been reappropriated. Now, we're going to be talking Batman today, Batman the Animated Series. It didn't spring whole cloth from the creators of that animated series. No, we're going to have to go back to 1939. Batman.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm going to let Antonio take over. I just want to say that Batman was created by Bill Finger.
Bill Finger, yeah.
Oh, and Bob Kane. He did some of the drawing.
This story, and now when I'm going to preface it, if you get a chance, there's a brilliant documentary. You can catch it on, I think it's on Hulu. It's called Batman and Bill, and it's about Bill Finger, and it gives you the whole history of it. But I'm going to give you, the cliff notes, basically. But so Bob Kane was a, up and coming cartoonist, I guess, like everybody in Brooklyn or wherever they were from in New York in the late 30s. He was a teenager, just out of high school. And he knew the folks over at National Comics, which was, the original DC Comics, Detective Comics was come out, there. And, Superman had just come out and was huge. And the editor was like, hey, I need a new superhero. And Bob Kane is like, all right, let me see what I can come up with. And he just pretty much saw a drawing of Da Vinci's flying machine.
Yeah.
And he's, I'm going to make a superhero out of that. And he drew this dude in a red costume, like in a red unitard with black shorts and a black domino mask and blonde hair. And he had on black bat wings. Here's my character. I guess he's going to be Batman, maybe? I don't know.
Bill Finger went, oh, I guess this is going to need some backstory.
Yeah, basically.
And some characters, right?
Yeah, I can't remember the guy's name now, but the guy who ran the company, he set him up together with Bill Finger, who was one of the up-and-coming writers, and Bill Finger was the writer. So Bill Finger's, okay, this costume is stupid. Who's going to fight crime in a red costume like that? And you're going to be a scary Batman. No, so he made the costume gray and black, and they put together the mask. I don't know who designed the mask, though. I mean...
We'll just give it to Bob Kane.
Yeah, I guess. But he had eyeballs, though. And,
if he were here, he would take credit.
Well, yeah, obviously. The Batman mask had eyeballs in it, and Bill Finger got rid of the eyeballs. He gave it the color scheme. He even... And Kane drew stiff wings. Bill Finger made it a cape.
So basically, he revamped and then made the Batman that we know today.
Well, yeah, then he came up with everything else, Bruce Wayne, Gotham City, the Batmobile, Robin, all this other shit came up thanks to Bill Finger.
Now, Bob Kane did come up with the Joker.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
No, the Joker was Jerry Robinson. It was really a combination of the three of them, if you want to be fair.
See, I was just being the normal fan who assumes that Bob Kane created everything because Bob Kane has been crowing about his creations forever.
No, it was a combination of more than likely Jerry Robinson and Bill Finger. Jerry Robinson had the card with the Joker face on it. He had drawn that. That's how legend goes. The other legend is they had seen the movie, The Man Who Laughs, was 10 years old, that movie. It wasn't like an oldie. It was just a movie that had come out when it was silent. And that was, a German film about a guy named Llapur, who was a circus freak who had his face carved into a hideous smile. And if you guys look at this up online, The Man Who Laughs, it's the fucking Joker.
Yeah.
Like
It's that early iteration
yeah,
of Joker.
but the funny thing is, it's the best Joker makeup there ever been. Like it's just this giant mouth with these teeth that's always smiling, and this really, it's always smiling. Even when he's sad, he's stuck in that smile. And none of the movies have ever got that. Maybe the Burton movie, but
Yeah,
they
that one
tried.
became surgical.
Yeah, we did a short film called Joker Does Shakespeare, man, like 20 years ago. You can find it on YouTube and at my our website, swampmediagroup.com. But in it, the Joker performs the Hamlet soliloquy to a dead guy. That's basically it. And I show up as a Batman reference in it. I'm not in a Batman costume. Trust me, you're okay.
Oh, okay. I was imagining.
And anyways, we tried to do that permanent smile thing, and we used the Halloween mask, and it didn't look great. I'm gonna tell you right now, it doesn't look great. So I don't know how to do it nowadays. Conrad Veidt, they just took two wires and yanked his mouth back, and then tied it to his ears or something
They
crazy.
Lon Chaney'd him.
Yeah, they Lon Chaney'd him. But then, anyways, everybody had seen that movie. That I think the Joker came out of Bill Finger and Jerry Robinson and maybe Bob Kane. I don't know how involved he was. I feel like he was in the office, Stan Lee, kind of saying, "Hey, I'm Stan Lee. Hello, I'm doing everything." But
Yeah.
really, he's just kind of dictating.
Why do we love Stan Lee for doing exactly what Bob Kane was doing?
Because Stan Lee was fucking charming. I've met Stan Lee, and he's just, hey, man. I shot an event that he was at a signing, and I got him to say Excelsior. It was great. I'm like, hey, Stan, can I get an Excelsior? He turns around and he goes, Excelsior. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing.
And he actually did a ton of writing.
He did do a ton of writing, but I mean, come on, Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko.
No, we don't need to get into that debate.
Yeah, that's a whole nother one. That's a whole other show.
Yeah.
We can stick to Bob Kane filching all the glory.
Bill Finger is the name that generally, when you think of all the cool stuff that Batman has, Bill Finger came up with it. And there was a whole slew of artists. There was Jerry Robinson, is probably my favorite of the golden age. If you see his most recognized piece is that Detective 38 with Robin's first appearance, and it's got the little Robin jumping through the circus circle or whatever,
The ring, the hoop.
Jumping through the hoop and breaking the thing, and he's smiling. And that's Jerry Robinson. Bob Kane could not draw that well. Detective 27, okay, that's Bob Kane, probably inked by Jerry Robinson.
We can't deny Bob Kane's contributions to Batman, but Batman didn't get cool until everybody else got their hands on him.
And there was Sheldon Meldoff was another writer. Was another artist. The other writer was Gardner Fox. Gardner Fox is known for creating The Flash and the Justice Society and all that, and those guys. And he wrote Batman for a little bit too. If the early stuff, if you ever see Batman holding a gun, that's a Sheldon Meldoff Batman comic. And the gun thing, they got rid of that by the time Robin showed up, no guns, no killing. That was by 1940. Robin came out like 9 months after Batman debuted. It wasn't like a big wait with because we're getting back to the original Batman. The original Batman with no Robin was like 6 months, man. And then the kid showed up, and then the Batman that we know and love that doesn't kill people, that doesn't have a gun, that's been there pretty much since the very, very beginning.
The Batman who doesn't kill right from the beginning. Interesting, Zack Snyder.
Yeah, sure. It's the 40s, so it's a liberal view of killing. Yeah, the monster might get killed or, whatever. But Batman's not whipping out a gun and shooting somebody. He's not murdering anybody.
I seem to remember a run of comics where Batman used to carry a gun, but this was during the 70s, early 80s.
That was Batman Year 2.
I just remember him draped over a grave with a .45 in his hand.
That was Todd McFarlane's big break.
Was it really?
Yeah. He only does 2 issues of it. It's so weird. 2 issues are done by him and 2 issues are done by Alan Davis.
I've seen Todd McFarlane sketching Batman just for fun, and I actually love his style with him.
Todd McFarlane Batman action figure statue back behind me with the giant oversized cape and everything.
Yeah, it's fucking beautiful.
Yeah. It is beautiful. And it that's funny. It's my second one of those things because I got it and I opened it and you can put the arms on it and stuff and the arm broke immediately. So I got it refunded and got another one and then I haven't opened it again.
The McFarlane Batman is sort of echoing the gothic style of Denny O'Neil.
Oh, yeah. It takes the Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams stuff and then pluses it. But, that Blue Cape Batman, that was the 70s and 80s and all that stuff. The best guy is from the 80s, though, is Jim Aparo. Jim Aparo was Batman in that time period. The best, because he did it the longest. My entire childhood, Jim Aparo drew Batman up until I got to high school.
So does that make him your Batman? They say that about Saturday Night Live. Whoever your group was in high school, That's your cast.
The Neil Adams this is an extension of the Neil Adams Batman. You know, the Jim Apparel's Batman and Neil Adams is pretty similar. Neil Adams is much more detailed and deliberate with his stuff, and Jim Apparel just had great camera angles, a lot of Dutch angles, was really good at action, and I feel like he just do it forever. And then the other great one was Marshall Rogers. And the Marshall Rogers and Terry Austin Batman is the best looking one of the bunch. But they only did 6 issues.
Yeah.
And that's the late 70s. It was my first Batman comic I got as a reprint in the mid 80s. And that's The Laughing Fish.
That's a gorgeous drawing.
And, you know, the end of The Dark Knight with them on top of the scaffolding and stuff. And that's the end of the Marshall Rogers Laughing Fish. It ends with them on the scaffolding and the lightning hits the Joker and he falls in the river.
Ah, okay.
Rather than getting caught. But, that Marshall Rogers had a really exaggerated cape, too.
My favorite Batman artist, obviously, is Bernie Wrightson, his work on The Cult.
Oh, yeah. That's that. Everybody's really ripped, and there's some giant bat ears that he draws.
Bat ears that he draws so far up, they seem to reach to heaven.
Yeah, he's one of my other go-to favorites. It's flawless.
The more restrained version of that, to me, is the Brian Boland version of Batman. He draws the Joker and Batman, and everyone's so long. It's unlike anything we've seen, certainly cinematically. We'll get back to the artists. Let's talk Batman in the cinema, or Batman in a visually moving media. Now, this started back in the 40s with the serials.
Yeah, the first serial was 1943. That was Batman and Robin. I know it was Batman. The Batman, I think it was. And it was Lewis Wilson was Batman. He was some guy in his 20s, and his costume kind of looks really good, but it's hella saggy and doesn't move well. And in the movie, it looks terrible. There's a couple of publicity shots. It looks great.
And they were driving a sedan.
And they're driving a sedan. The Robin is played by Douglas Croft, who is also in the greatest movie of all time. He plays little Charles Foster Kane.
Wow. I got the right co-host there.
Yeah.
Okay, so serials, that's the first taste of Batman.
Or he's either that or he's Kane's son. He's one of the two.
Doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't matter to me, I know.
And he's fucking in Batman. So there we go, he's Robin.
And then there's another one in 40. Oh, and then that one they fight Dr. Daka, who's, a guy with the wax eyelids.
None of the rogues gallery of villains show up in the serials.
And then in 49, you get Batman and Robin, where the Robin looks like he's 30. And they drive a darker sedan.
Yeah.
But that one introduces the bat signal. That's the first place you see it in anywhere, was in that serial.
When I was growing up, in the town next to mine, Chelsea, Massachusetts, there was a movie theater that was a second-run revival house where I got to see the serials on a Saturday morning. And I got to tell you, I was crazily disappointed. I was told we were going to go see Batman. I thought we were going to go see a Batman cartoon, or at the very least, we were going to see perhaps the greatest incarnation, at least from television up until the show we're talking about, from 1966, the Adam West Batman. I love that each of the iterations of Batman will include at least a few characters or situations that will resonate so hard that people think that they've been there since the beginning, that it's some sort of new innovation.
Well, Kryptonite was introduced first on the Superman radio show.
Well, he was just too powerful.
It's amazing. And Batman and Robin's first media appearance was on their radio show.
Superman didn't even fly to begin with.
No, he just jumped. Yeah, I'm a little younger, but it's, it lived in reruns. I remember being a little boy in Vegas and waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning on Saturday because they ran 2 episodes of it. And I'm being like 8 or 9 going, this is my only way I can get a Batman fix.
And you got both parts.
Yeah, and I got both parts.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. But if you look back at that show, that is literally the most faithful adaptation of all of it. Yeah, it's silly and it's wacky, but it's the 60s, man. Everybody's either drunk or high, and it's perfectly fine. And,
And they know it's a joke.
And they know it's a joke, man.
And they're basing it off of the Silver Age of Batman.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, those comics were that. Like, you pick up a 1950s Batman comic drawn by the magnificent genius Dick Sprang, who we're going to get to today in today's episode. Dick Sprang is, that's the episodes they adapted from that comic. For the show from the Dick Sprang era when he was drawing this. The Joker's utility belt, that's a Bill Finger Dick Sprang comic. With the only thing they never got to was like the giant typewriter or anything like that. But
Yeah,
for
because
no, they probably had a giant typewriter on the Adam West show.
But they didn't have the penny.
No, he didn't get the penny. We didn't get Two-Face on the show. He was too weird.
Which is bizarre considering they were concocting characters just for the show.
Two-Face, like they had False Face, who was Plaything, but then Two-Face never got to. What it was cool was that a few years ago they did those animated movies.
Yes.
Well, right before we lost Adam West,
The Return of the Caped Crusaders.
the Two-Face one. William Shatner as Two-Face, and I'm just like, wow, whoever cooked that one up at Warner's Animation, just because somebody should have played Two-Face. That Adam West movie, I had it on videotape, taped off ABC or whatever, and I just watched it so much as a kid. It's just such a blast. And Adam West and Burt Ward are great, man. Yeah, they're in on the joke and all that stuff, and it's a comedy show, but if you're a little kid, that's clearly Batman and Robin.
Because I bought into it 100% as a kid. It's only when you become a teenager you realize that Zang and Pow, those are a bit silly, and you start to see all of the seams. And there was a whole culture around what a joke the show was, but they were in on that joke.
But the Burton, you look back and look at the Burton pictures, and I'm talking about the Burton movies, not even the Joel Schumachers that were trying to be Adam West.
Yeah.
But the Burton movies themselves are pretty silly. I mean, the scripts are ridiculous. Like they don't have, the scripts of those movies don't capture all the nuance, drama, and fun that the comics give you. They just look amazing, and they're really well paced. So they're very entertaining movies, but they're shitty scripts.
Before we get to Burton, there's a period between, say, 1968 and the present, where the only Batman we were getting were the Super Friends appearances and in Scooby-Doo movies.
You had two guys playing Batman, basically. You had Adam West, actually, plays him on the late 70s Filmation Batman, which is probably the first thing I saw, I would assume. And then Adam West plays it on that last season of Super Friends, which is the first place you get Batman's origin, actually.
I remember distinctly when he took over the part.
And that's a great episode. That's the first place I really got that origin, as a little boy. And I'm like, oh, I get it now. I lost my dad when I was 7. And it was, I was there. And it was very traumatic. It was just a heart attack. It wasn't a mugger, but I got it. And as, an 8 or 9, 10, 11-year-old boy watching that Super Friends, how old I was, I got it. I'm like, oh, God, Batman. He gets it. And I was like, I had always loved it. You will find me pictures of 2-year-old me with Mego Batman toys and stuff. But that's where I got it.
That's the connection, yeah.
But the other Batman was Olan Soule. And he was the guy, hey, great Gotham, Robin. That guy on the Super Friends.
Yeah.
And but he played Batman for 15 years almost. He was Batman in the late 60s show. That was pretty much a cartoon version of the Adam West show, I guess.
Right.
And then on the Super Friends all through the 70s. And then on the Scooby show, that was him too.
Okay.
That episode of Super Friends where you get the origin and they fight the Scarecrow and all that stuff is loosely based on like a 70s comic. I think they swapped Wonder Woman for Batgirl, but it's kind of the same thing. And that was a backdoor pilot for a Batman show that never happened. But
It's 66.
no, this is the 86, 87 Super Friends.
Oh, okay.
It was a backdoor pilot for a Batman show, a Hanna-Barbera Batman show. So in it, you got Alfred, you got Robin, you got Batman's origin. And, now it just lives on as that meme video. That hey, look out, Bruce, he's coming after you. Oh, my God. That one with like the wacky voices of that. It's a pretty big internet meme, but that's about it. And I remember always searching for that episode, hoping a rerun I would catch it. And I think I saw it twice when I was a little kid, but it stuck.
Batman sort of comes into his own in popular culture in 1989 with the Batman film, the project that had been gestating forever, since the 70s. But really since Superman, that's when Mankiewicz writes his script.
That's when Michael Uslan gets the rights to it. Yeah, Michael Uslan was like some 20-year-old kid that worked at DC Comics. And already started as an intern or something, and he might have written some copy for them or something. And he saw Superman. He's, bro, I love Batman. I wonder if I could get the rights to it. And so he found this old-timey Hollywood producer who was like 75 years old named Benjamin
Melniker.
Yeah, that's it. And he put up the little bit of money. They got the rights for nothing.
It's insane. He still has those rights.
Still has those rights. Every time you see Batman in anything, you're going to see Michael Uslan's name. I got his book sitting on my table right here.
The Boy Who Loved Batman. I saw the documentary.
We owe him a debt of gratitude because all this media that we have really exists because some kid was like, dude, I love Batman. I wonder if I can get the rights to it. It's wild. And I've read that Mankiewicz script, and that Mankiewicz script is great. It's a lot of fun.
It's the Superman script.
Yeah, it's the exact same tone, but it's fun. It's got a giant typewriter in it. It's got Robin in it. Ivan Reitman was attached to
Yeah,
him.
they wanted Eddie Murphy to be Robin, and Bill Murray to be Batman.
But in that manuscript, Thomas Wayne, I think, might have been running for mayor or something. And the Joker.
And there were some interim scripts as well, because at one point, Joe Dante, right after Gremlins,
Oh, no kidding.
and he said that he read the script and kept going over and over in his mind about how he would shoot it. But the next day he went back to the producers and he said, I can make this movie, but I can make it about the Joker. That's all I'm interested in. And that's not what you need. You want a Batman movie. So he bowed out.
That's amazing. I can't believe that. See, that's a weird thing because back then, these guys don't realize that there's a comic shop over on a really good comic shop over on Sunset. You know, they can just go take a taxi down to Golden Apple and spend the afternoon, and there's your movie. Sam Hamm or Warren Scarron, one of those guys, has been making the rounds lately, talking about the Burton movies.
Yeah.
And how they're coming up with the shit for Batman Returns, and him and Burton are just coming up with it.
That's Daniel Waters.
That's Dan Waters.
Yeah.
But they're just coming up with it and not cracking open a comic book or anything like that. I'm just, are you guys that big of snobs back then? Or?
I don't know if it was snobbishness. I happen to think that Batman Returns is my favorite Batman movie. I mean, what we have right now, the current Batman, the Matt Reeves, the Batman, that Batman is the actual comic book Batman I like. And I like that movie, and I want to see more of it. But I love the fairy tale aspect of the Tim Burton film. It feels like a one-off issue of a comic by a guest artist.
I like the world that he makes in those movies. I like what he does visually in those movies. And I equate it to getting a Batman comic where the story's on, but the art is so good.
Right.
That you just can't help but just go back and keep looking at it. And that's generally what I feel. I prefer the first one a little more, only because I just love Jack Nicholson, and it's a lot of black, and it's got the Prince music, and it's just,
Yeah.
and it was that movie at that age for me, right?
Absolutely.
And it's like that movie at that age, being obsessed with it, reading the novelization in a day, the comic book, learning how to draw Michael Keaton accurately at that age, and then a few months later realizing, why the fuck did the Joker kill Batman's parents? Did the Batman just drive that fucking Batmobile and kill all these guys? And I started finding all the things that I didn't like about it. And I go, well, if I made a Batman movie, and if I made a Batman movie, and if I made a Batman movie, and then I'm like, oh, I want to make a Batman. Oh, I want to make movies.
There you go.
Even though Star Wars is my whole,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
even though that year I saw Goodfellas and I discovered what a director does watching Goodfellas, because I remember not liking Goodfellas the first time I watched it and going, wait a second, I don't think I just didn't understand it. Let me watch that again. But that Batman, though, let me tell you.
Uh-huh.
And when Batman Returns came out, I was all over that too. And it's a beautiful movie, but that summer they announced that there was going to be a cartoon show and that they were going to spend money on this cartoon show. And there was going to be something you had never seen before. And it premiered like on Sunday night at 7:30. They aired that On Leather Wings episode with Man Bat. And I recorded that shit because I had to be at church because, I was a good Catholic kid. And whoa, I'm like, I can't believe it. I go, Michael Keaton is neat and everything, but this is Batman.
For fans of the comic, it was the first time we got Batman.
And I was obsessed with that comic. I was going through puberty. So I'm obsessed with Catwoman. I'm Jason Todd is dying. I'm the Dark Knight Returns and Arkham Asylum. Oh my God, Arkham Asylum.
Oh my gosh.
Still makes me melt my brain when I read it because I just discover new stuff when I go back to it. And of course, the Killing Joke, all's new. What a time to be 12, 13 years old.
It's a Bat Renaissance.
Yeah. And, to this day, it's because of that. But that show
What's funny is at the time, in the mid-'80s, people started taking comic books seriously, and it's mainly due to Watchmen. But I argued that people were still saying this was for kids until Batman blew up. So now all of the media that we had been consuming as comic book readers, which was no longer a kiddie cartoon, it was dealing with very adult issues and themes. Finally, the rest of America accepted it. But then we were dealt a horrible blow with Joel Schumacher. But those don't matter because we're not talking about them right now. We're talking about 1992, Batman, the animated series, which for the first time in any media that Batman has appeared, you can tell the creators are actually fans.
This show deserves a lot of credit for keeping Batman in the zeitgeist. It deserves a lot of credit for keeping a generation of kids younger than me interested in the characters and stuff because of those Joel Schumacher movies were so off-putting, you know, and you can make the argument that, oh, I'm just being a fuddy-duddy and this and that, or I'm being, some kind of phobic or the other or whatever, because they took, like, Batman Forever takes a father-son relationship, and these two guys who are the same age living together. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that, but it makes the relationship that I grew up with weird.
Yeah,
It makes it weird to me when he's like, hey, you don't hang out in a lot of biker bars, do you? I'm like, what kind of line is that for Robin to give Batman? And then the next one is awful too. And it's too bad because Val Kilmer would have been great in a decent Batman movie, and George Clooney would have even been better.
100%.
Because there's a couple scenes in that awful second one where he's there. There's a scene where because him talking to Chris O'Donnell is more fatherly. They look older, there's the age difference is more apparent there.
Yeah.
And him yelling at him, I make the rules that we live by and you will abide by them. I'm like, okay. And then when he's with Alfred, I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, he deserved Batman for Batman Begins or whatever. Batman Begins kind of sucks too.
Yeah,
but they're pretentious. And there's one thing Batman can't be is pretentious, man.
We just lost our one listener.
I know, right? You can't go against the Holy Trilogy. I will argue that the scripts for the first two, for Begins and Dark Knight, are pretty good.
I don't like the script for Batman Begins, but then I've never been a fan of Ra's al Ghul and that whole plot line. I appreciate it's where he would come from, but I don't need any more dealings with Ra's al Ghul or his ninja assassins.
Yeah, that was Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams' attempt to James Bondify Batman a little bit.
And it works in the comics, but I don't have any truck with it, but ultimately it's just, I want Batman in Gotham. Exactly what you just said. It turns Batman into an international affair, like James Bond. That's fine, and it's fine that Batman is with the Justice League. But for me, Batman in Gotham City with his rogues gallery, I don't need one thing more.
Yeah, I love all of that other stuff. I love the Super Friends. I would love to make a Justice League film. I know how to do it. I know what to do with it. But at the end of the day, don't need any of it. The only thing that I just Batman and Gotham and his group. Any other comic book heroes, I don't need them. I just need Batman. I think is of the genre, it's the most interesting. It's the most contemporary, and it's the most adaptable. I mean, and I'm not talking about to other media. I'm talking about to the times. Batman comics can always be relevant for some reason or the other. Superman always has to fight for his relevance. So there's always periods where in time when people are going, well, why Superman? He's not relevant anymore. And someone's got to come along. Superman's good because A, B, and C. Batman is always relevant.
That's true.
No one ever has to go, hey, remember Batman? No. How are we going to forget him? He's the best guy. He's got the car. There's the wish fulfillment of it to a certain degree. I can be Batman. I don't know why anybody would want to, because losing a parent is the worst. And there's all these other things, but I don't know.
It doesn't seem like a fun life, but
it doesn't seem like a fun life at all.
No, he has chosen the hardest thing he can possibly do.
The only guy who's really having a good time is Dick Grayson, and even he had to go through hell.
I bet Alfred's having a good time. He's at least amused.
Right. And if you keep up with the comics...
The boy I raised.
And he called it, by now, he just calls him my boy. What those comics really are at their heart about, it's about this kid who lost his mom and his dad horribly. And here's this makeshift family that he kind of builds for himself, Yeah, it's about avenging the night and all this other wonderful stuff. But there's an emotional heart at it. And there's always that. It doesn't matter how big the family is. Like in some iterations, it's just him and Alfred. In other iterations, it's Batmite or Batman and Robin or Batman, Catwoman and Alfred, or now Batman, Nightwing, Red Hood, Red Robin, Barbara, Stephanie.
What's the dog's name?
Ace. His dog is Ace, and Damien's dog is Titus.
Damian Wayne is a whole other facet. Okay, we could talk this universe forever, but we have to talk about Mr. Bruce Timm.
So yeah,
and
Bruce
Paul
Timm
Dini.
and Paul Dini.
The actual architect.
I guess the showrunners was what they would be now.
Yeah, Bruce Timm is technically the showrunner, Paul Dini story editor.
Dan Reba, Glenn Murakami, I think. Yeah, it's a lot.
A group of exceedingly talented people given the chance of a lifetime to make the ultimate Batman television series, and they fucking did it. Not only as far as story goes, they finally got plots correct, they got the characters correct, and they made it gorgeous. Hand-drawn animation is a lost art, and it was pitiful on television.
The best stuff you had to get from Japan. Transformers and G.I. Joe actually looked pretty good, but they were made by anime studios. And they were made by the cheapest anime studios available. I mean, the animation's not even great on them, but forget it. And like He-Man, the animation on He-Man is awful. And it's too bad because it's from Filmation, and Filmation did a lot of good stuff in the 70s. But by He-Man, they're just phoning it in, man. It's like they have 3 or 4 rotoscope animation cycles for every character, and then that's what they go with.
All the mighty houses have fallen by 1992, but thank God Warner Brothers. I remember driving. I lived in Los Angeles at the time, and I remember seeing the Batman the Animated Series billboard go up, which at the time was just the red silhouette of the bat, of his cowl. There's no verbiage on it. All I could think, well, fucking something special's on the way.
Yeah, I remember that a lot. Did that explosion happen? I mean, it was a lot of it because of Spielberg, right? Because he influxed a lot of cash into Warner Brothers Animation to do Tiny Toons and Animaniacs and that stuff. And a lot of the Batman staff came out of Tiny Toons. Paul Dini, for example, came out of Tiny Toons.
So all of these guys come together, and the character models are kind of my favorite of all time. Bruce Timm's style. If you look at all of those character models.
Yeah, he did all the character models, and the show evolved even with his own style a little bit. And it's all they started with. Who was the designers on the show? He was a designer. Comic book artist Kevin Nolan. He was an early designer too. There's a couple other dudes, but Bruce Timm was the main guy.
Bruce Timm, I will say here, draws ladies better than any other animator. Every comic book artist has a problem when they're drawing women. It's either they draw a perfect body and a terrible face, or a perfect face and a terrible body. Bruce Timm can do both.
Who's that fine artist out now that does like all those, a lot of prints, like very 60s kind of stuff?
Shag.
Yeah, Shag. And the first time I saw Shag, I'm like, man, that motherfucker's biting Tim Burton. Bruce Timm. That motherfucker Shag is biting Bruce Timm because it's that kind of Bruce Timm. What I think he gets is he gets just the basic geometry too. Like,
you know who every character is without any color at all.
But you mentioned the ladies. He gets the shape, the triangle, the oval. He gets it, and I think his style translates so well to animation. People and the uninformed would call it cartoony. But no, it's efficient. It's like Super Friends. They try to get away with kind of more realistic looking, not realistic, but more anatomically full, I guess.
Closer to realism
Yeah.
than not.
Closer to realism, closer to the comic book than not. But to animate that, it's hard, man. So you get a lot of stiff people with just the mouths moving. But with the Bruce Timm style, I mean, they're able to be more fluid, I think, because it's their basic shapes on the animation. It's really revolutionary. Everybody's like, that's not going to work. It looks like a Disney cartoon. And I think his argument is like, well, yeah, there's a reason why those work.
And not only the character models, but the animation itself, and the color palette, and the amount of shading and shadow that goes into this.
It's very the noir influence is undeniable. The influence from the Fleischer Supermans. That was when they started. They said, we want to do the Fleischer Batman, basically. They want to do something that was as handsome as those Fleischer Supermans. And those Fleischer Supermans are.
Oh, they're gorgeous.
The most beautiful, and all rotoscope too, by the way, but very painstakingly, very expensive too. The best cheat on the Batman the Animated Show is that all the backgrounds are in black paper. It gives it life though. And I was rewatching it, they've remastered it now, it's high def and stuff, and you can really see the detail on it, and it's magnificent. At this point, you can almost see the grain in the paper. It's gorgeous. It just
I want to say there's never been anything like it, but these guys kept chugging on even after the series ended.
The subsequent shows, and you even see it when it switches to Superman, but even the New Adventures season 3 of this show, a little lot lighter, no black paper, for example.
Right.
They've discovered Photoshop to color them now. And then by the time in Justice League, they're, CG animating the big things and all that stuff. And it's not their fault. It's just the budget.
People castigate Hanna-Barbera for their cheap style, but I counter that they were the ones keeping animation alive. So pick your goddamn battles.
TV animation, because they did the Flintstones. Yeah, the Flintstones is cheaply animated, but it was popular and it was on TV for 1,000 years. And, and Yogi Bear is really cheaply animated.
It's all about the writing. Speaking of writing, we're talking about Paul Dini because very far into the first season has, what, 60 episodes? So if you haven't seen the show, available on Max right now, you better get going.
There's 109 total of the original show plus the other stuff.
This is episode 35, written by Paul Dini, directed by Dan Ariba, and starring Kevin Conroy as Batman, Mark Hamill as the Joker, Richard Mall as Harvey Two-Face, Arlene Sorkin as Harleen Quinzel. A word about Harleen Quinzel, and what I was saying earlier about how each popular iteration of whatever media Batman happens to appear in at the time tends to echo. Everyone loves Harley Quinn. She's been around forever, right? No. 1992, Harleen Quinzel, Arkham psychiatrist who becomes the Joker's paramour and eventual lover of Poison Ivy, begins here from the pen of Paul Dini.
Her first debut. If you go back and watch some of the old Adam West shows, there are proto Harleys on there. Cesar Romero always had a girlfriend and stuff, and there was a couple, bimbo ones. But I can't believe this was like a one-off character, and Paul Dini, I think it was, or Bruce, one of them was friends with Arlene Sorkin, and she was a soap opera actress. And she had done an episode in a Harley Quinn costume with kind of that voice.
And now it's like she's always been there.
Yeah, and she's magnificent. And there are other Harleys, but she's the gold standard.
Also, starring as the Penguin, there have been lots of great iterations of the Penguin over the years. Burgess Meredith, Danny DeVito, Robin Lord Taylor, now Colin Farrell. But I have a soft spot in my heart for the voice of the Penguin here, Mr. Paul Williams.
He's in my head he's pretty good. He doesn't have the raspiness that like Burgess Meredith had, which I adore, but he's still playing that Penguin.
I believe this Penguin doesn't lift a finger if he doesn't have to.
And I love the way he speaks. I love his alliterations, his quotes, and your malicious machinations. I'm like, man, I love that.
And the script very keenly observes all of these characters to the point where, well, of course he's drinking a pot of tea while they're playing poker, and of course Harvey Two-Face is drinking coffee with half and half. The episode itself, the plot is, it finds Batman's rogues gallery in the form of the Joker, Penguin, Killer Croc, Harvey Dent, and Poison Ivy. I think Harley's in there, but she only features into the story.
She features in the story, yeah.
Initially, I misremembered this as them telling stories in prison, but no, they're in a bar.
But that's like a traditional thing with Batman villains. I feel like the upper echelon Batman villains tend to hang out with one another to a certain degree. I feel like there should be a certain loose camaraderie with them. Okay, they're not going to invite Firefly. They're not going to, they're not going to invite Killer Moth, or whatever, or Tweedledum and Tweedledee. But if you're the Joker and the Penguin, and I feel like they don't like inviting the Joker, but he's going to go anyways. The more modern, I guess, iterations of some of these characters, where they're more than just loonies that are on a caper, whereas now they're, the Scarecrow kind of has the corner on the drug market. The Penguin kind of feel like it's filling the void of the mobsters of the town. And, they all kind of have their long-running rackets now rather than the way they are.
Before, it would be just whatever random crime.
And this show does it. When you get to the Penguin stories, I put word out in the underworld that I was going to steal this rare bird and make them main or whatever. I'm just like, what's like the bird crimes? The aviary of doom. With Paul Williams, let's I know you're a big fan of his.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, if you're a young person listening to this, you have no idea who the hell Paul Williams is.
Well, if you ever heard of the Rainbow Connection, you know Paul Williams. He wrote all of the Muppet songs.
If you were born sometime, in the 70s or something, like anytime before or a little bit after, this guy was like the go-to, he was always popping up somewhere. If you watched something when you were a little kid back then, Paul Williams would inadvertently show up at some point. If it was a Muppet Show or the A-Team or the Dukes and Hazzard, he was going to be a guest star on it. But he's this famous-ass songwriter and singer. And he had just a string of hits throughout the 70s. There's a really good documentary on him that I saw not long ago. He's huge in the Philippines, apparently.
Well, for me, Paul Williams will always be Swan, the antagonist of Phantom of the Paradise, Brian De Palma's glam rock musical from 1975. I've seen him perform a bunch of times. I once had Paul Williams huddle me up and sing a song directly to me because we had requested the song and he had forgotten to sing it on stage. He just huddled me up and said, "Here, I'll do it for you."
And if you see him visually, he looks like the comic book Penguin. He's a little short guy, a little chubby, and you put him in a tuxedo and a big rubber nose, man, he could have just knocked it out of the park.
If this had just been Batman the series, not animated, he could have stepped into the role easily.
So these guys all get together to play poker, have some cocktails or whatever they're going to do. Joker's obviously going to cheat at cards. The first shot of you see him, he's got all the cards fanned out in his hands at the same time.
Now, Killer Croc begins telling a story about Batman. It's important that Killer Croc is the one doing it.
Who's the actor is? Aaron Kincaid. He was an American actor. It looks like he did a lot of beach party bingo movies in the 60s. He was actually pretty good, too. I really like the tenor of his voice when he talks like, let me tell you a story. I almost had Batman. I threw a rock at him.
This version of Killer Croc is great. I hate to default to the character designs here being so fucking spectacular, but this is simply the best Killer Croc of all time.
And he's not even green.
No, he's gray and weird looking. He's a fucking creature.
Now, the character Waylon Jones is from the South. He's a black guy now. I think they write him as a black dude now. But back then he was just, comic book characters always evolve and stuff, especially if, they're B-listers. And I liked him in that terrible Suicide Squad movie. I liked the performance to a certain degree. And he looked cool. But this is the best Killer Croc there's ever been. And he's stupid, but he's kind of lovable. In the season 3, they green him up in it. But he's got a great episode with Baby Doll, and they have a coupling, and it's really well done. It's a cool character, and I love the way he plays out in this, and how the other villains are very dismissive of him. And by the end of the episode, you realize, oh man, of course he's going to use Killer Croc.
Killer Croc is telling a story about he almost got Batman. He almost killed Batman, which prompts a roundtable discussion from the Rogues Gallery of Villains about their favorite or most important time, the one time where they almost killed Batman, but he got away. It's almost like they almost got him. And starting our tales is the lovely Poison Ivy, who tells a tale about how she rigged an entire pumpkin patch at Halloween time with poison gas. In the original script, evidently, this was supposed to take place at Christmas time, and she was supposed to explode a Christmas tree, killing everyone in the vicinity. Standards and practices said, nope, can't do that.
I have a handy-dandy Batman the Animated Series Bible book. The overview of the series by Paul Dini and famed graphic designer Chip Kidd, which is really neat. And there's a drawing in there there's right here, the standard of practices. And it's all the stuff that they couldn't do.
For our listeners, let me describe it. It is Batman and the Joker tussling. They've broken through and are falling out a window. The Joker has a .45 caliber pistol in his hand and has shot a hole through Batman. There's a kid sitting on Batman, so that kid is in danger. There's a hypodermic needle in the bottom of the frame falling out. There's also a bottle of booze. And to top it off, Catwoman is on the bottom, flying out the window as well, and she's completely naked. I really want to see this episode.
So, their standards and practices, you read the book, it's just, they were on them like white on rice, man. They just would not let them. So they had, of course, get creative, and they snuck some stuff in there. Something I always thought was super interesting is, so my family's Latino, we're super Catholic, right? I grew up, went to Catholic school my whole life, and, I'm a real, lapsed, I guess, I'm growing up. But anyways, what struck me about this show, this was the first place I had ever seen an actual priest on a show. There was an episode about a gangster trying to go straight, and his brother was a priest. And, the very 1950s movie kind of episode that, what other show are you going to get? A superhero show? I'm going to get a little treatise on this. But the guy's brother was a priest, not a parson, not a reverend, not like every other show always had these generic. So I feel like they kind of tried a little harder with this show. They tried not to make a kid show. They just tried to make a show that everybody would watch. They made a show that they wanted to watch.
They also get the regular citizens of Gotham right in the form of Commissioner Gordon, Renee Montoya, and particularly Harvey Bullock. These are all mainstay characters now.
They're all major Batman, and they were just background characters at that point in the comic books. I think Renee Montoya actually came from this show. Right. And now she's one of the main supporting cast in the comics. And very weird, because in The Dark Knight, that's clearly Renee Montoya and Harvey Bullock. in that movie, where she's the dirty cop and they're both dirty cops or something like that in it.
Which in that
Dark Knight, but their names are different. And I'm just like, why the fuck would you change their name? Clearly, John Nolan and Goyer write some comic books, and this is what they came up with. That's why I like the script of that. I'm like, I see there's a Batman movie in there, but it gets all. Anyways,
Rosie Perez ended up playing her.
in that weird Birds of Prey movie.
That was a missed opportunity to get Black Mask correct on screen. And they just made him a spoiled rich kid, whereas Black Mask is probably the most terrifying Batman villain.
He's pretty scary. The Black Mask is, yeah, he's a spoiled rich kid. Okay. He's a spoiled son of a mobster who was jealous of his dad. So he killed his dad and then made a skeleton mask out of the mahogany of his dad's casket. And then takes over the Gotham mob. In my eventual Batman movie, we're going to say at this point, right? I'm going to do it one day, I swear. There's a gang war between the Penguin and the Black Mask. Because those two characters, I don't think, could exist in the same city.
Okay, Poison Ivy's rigged some pumpkins. It actually kind of bothered me that she was using plants as the explosive device. Like, it seemed like she wouldn't destroy plants in any form.
It's Gotham City. If you're a supervillain, you've got a drug guy making you the craziest shit imaginable.
Yeah.
This is and if you notice in this episode, the wacky drugs are like, I've got this gas ready for Gotham City in my pumpkins. The Penguin has his poison hummingbirds with their wacky gas and wacky poison, and the Joker's got his Joker thing. Batman and Robin must be high just constantly throughout. There's a great essay by Grant Morrison, who I think is him and Denny O'Neil and Bill Finger. Those are the three great Batman writers. And Grant Morrison says that, Batman's whatever how old he is now. But you can see it, when he starts out, he's in his early 20s. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's got a gun for a little bit, but maybe no. Then he meets this kid, so he's got to lighten up a little bit. And by the 60s, the villains are using so much like hallucinogenic gases against them that they're actually seeing the onomatopoeia show up in them because they're just hallucinating. So they see pow, biff, and bash and all that stuff. So it's, and to a point, yeah. They all use that shit. They're always gassing Batman. They're always this and that. It's just Rita Hayworth. Yeah. And in her flashback, she's not wearing her tights. She's just in a bathing suit. She's barefoot. It's weird. They redesign her later.
And what's funny, the design here with the trench coat and the Casablanca hat will become a major part of her character design henceforward. It's as important as the leotard, the sexy version of her.
Now, you were going into the Harley. We'll go back. We'll circle back to Poison Ivy on Harley. But her redesign is actually one of the redesigns that I prefer. I love Rita Hayworth. Like I say, I'm a huge Orson Welles fan, so obviously I love Rita Hayworth. The Poison Ivy in the later episodes where she's pale with the kind of green undertone and kind of almost gothy really plays well to the characterization of her. I think Poison Ivy moving forward in comic media, we're not talking about Uma Thurman, but in comics and in the video games, certainly I think that's the kind of direction they went.
The next story is the Penguin in his aviary of doom. What I really liked about this is how silent Batman is, and he's silent pretty much throughout. He could be cracking wise the entire time.
Batman cracks wise with only Alfred and the kid, but, depends on your dynamic of the kid. If it's Dick, it's a little more looser. If it's one of the younger ones, it's a little more dad-like.
Right.
I do think that if I was writing him, you know what, I'd give him a lot of, not with the bad guys or with anybody else, but among the family, I would write him with bad dad jokes.
Yeah, certainly.
To me, that's what Batman is, like this father figure to me, or, because of my own background, but I don't know. He doesn't. He can be quipping with the bad guys. That's Spider-Man's job. But if you notice that there's a theme in the episode too, the death trap. They've all got some crazy death trap, and that is the number one Batman. One of the number one Batman tropes is he gets out of death traps. He pulls that thing out of his utility belt at the last second. Pull it out of his ass at the last second, And here, he's got The Penguin I like about it is the Penguin's, well, I've anticipated your genius moves here and getting out of my death trap.
Right.
Yeah, I know you're reaching for your prepared antitoxin. Well, here's this ostrich with whatever that's going to come eat you. Like,
He's like Scaramanga, the man with the golden gun. He's just practicing and waiting to get his hands on Bond.
but he gets out of it because he's Batman. That's what he does.
But his method here is birds with poison-tipped beaks. Birds that are slowly flying after Batman, this heavily armored super vigilante. But Batman's solution is fucking ingenious. He just turns the sprinklers on, and it wets the birds down and they can't fly.
And that's what's so great about that character. I always love too is just his ability to problem solve. It's always, oh, that's all right. I got this. I'm Batman.
The greatest innovation from The Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller's book, was we finally got to hear Batman's inner monologue.
Which is missing in the adaptation. But we'll get to that one when we cut to the next episode.
Yeah.
So for Batman fans, now we know about what he's saying to himself. So even if you see him in a silent scenario, you know the wheels are turning in there.
There's something that the Miller misses, I think. And I love the Miller. My favorite Batman stories, that's when my first ones were Year One and Dark Knight Returns. And then Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum was what I like. And of course, Killing Joke. But Miller's interior monologue is really good, but it's very hard-boiled. In Year One, when he's writing the younger Bruce Wayne, I like the vulnerability of him trying to figure it out. And he's just, no, I'm not a killer. But the one thing I have to say about the Penguin, it is the most atypical, it is the most typical Penguin story imaginable.
Yeah.
When you think about the Penguin, this is clearly it. The Poison Ivy one is all right, but it's not a traditional, it's not a Poison Ivy story is she kisses some powerful man into doing something to save the environment, and at the same time commit a crime.
The remarkable thing is each of the stories presented here boil their character down to their basics, except Poison Ivy. And maybe this is because it was in a pumpkin patch that it's jogging this sort of connection, but that story should have been Scarecrow. There's no seduction part. There's no part where she uses seduction in any way. It's just about blowing shit up.
And the thing is, and I think the character of Poison Ivy really matured in all media because of this show, because she matures in her episodes too. They develop her a lot over the run of the show. I think she's very kind of one-dimensional, and by the end of it, you kind of understand, oh, look, she's got these plant children, and she cares about her children. Oh, I see her connection to the environment. It's a little bit more.
Oh, yeah.
And then teaming her with Harley and realizing after all these years, oh, yeah, of course she's gay. But of course, Poison Ivy's gay. That was something, like, she's so hypersexual, and in her powers and all that stuff, of course she doesn't love these guys.
Yeah.
And when they got together, it was this, of course. But it started as this weird sex fantasy.
Right.
Not a weird sex fantasy, because it's a sex fantasy that I would have written into it at 20-something years old too. But it's just, hey, let's get these two guys and these two girls in their underwear together.
I like that her eventual acceptance of her homosexuality echoes backwards, because in this one there's tension between her and Two-Face because they used to date. I wonder why it didn't work out.
There was an episode, it was one of her first episodes. She was dating Harvey Dent before he became Two-Face, and she was manipulating him. And it was like in the early runs of the earlier episodes, and she was, using him as one of the victims.
It's kind of incredible how influential, the more you get into it, the more you look at all the characters and situations and everything like this has informed Batman. Now, the next story is the Two-Face one, the giant penny.
And the penny, of course, is common knowledge lives in that Batcave.
If you were a passing fan of the comics or the TV show, you would always see the trophies that Batman has in the Batcave, a Tyrannosaurus Rex and a giant typewriter and a Joker card, and there was this giant penny.
Most people believe that the penny comes from Two-Face. Not true. The penny originated in a 1947 issue, I think, called The Penny Plunderer. And that was a prop in that story, and Batman kept it.
I think it works so much better.
It does work better. And another death trap. Batman, I've got you tied to this penny, and I'm going to flip this coin and smush you. Like, good Lord, Adam West could have been tied to that thing. Because it's literally, I think it was a fly swatter they were tied to on the 60s show or something like that, But again, that's a Batman trope, is a death trap.
I love that this is Richard Mole, by the way, playing Two-Face. It's a great version of Two-Face.
As a little kid, I watched Night Court. So, wow, I haven't seen Night Court. Like it was that neat, but he's so good because his Two-Face before getting scarred is really just a normal guy and really does a lot of things with the voice.
What I find amusing about the whole scenario is if the penny lands face down, Batman's going to be squished. But if it lands face up, he's going to be broken into pieces anyway.
I've seen it online. There's a million things on YouTube. Yeah. And one of them was like, there's a psychologist trying to psychoanalyze these characters.
Oh, I've seen this.
I don't think he even gets it right. I've been reading. I know these characters better than the psychologist does, and he said Two-Face's thing is actually OCD, and I'm like, that's part of it. And Harvey Dent's a really rich character. They explored him a lot on the show. They really go through the whole transformation with him. He's Harvey Dent for a while, then becomes two. It's on a TV show now. Harvey Dent's the guy, and he turns into Two-Face at the end of season 2. And you've liked this guy, all this time, and oh, geez, now he's this monster. And, for a 60 something, whatever, how many episodes they do of this show, that's pretty cool to develop that on a kid show. That much character development and continuity, and the cool thing is that all the episodes still operate as their own little individual short films.
As serialized as it is, it's really episodic. You can still drop in anywhere. That's the neat trick that these shows were doing. On regular episodic television, there was never any attempt at a through line.
So that's pretty neat. I mean, that's very sophisticated for a show, I think, aimed essentially at teenagers and college kids.
It's drafting off of the success of the Batman film. Speaking of which, the theme for this show, much like Star Trek Generation looked over at Star Trek the Motion Picture and said, hey, you know that main theme you've got there? Could I just take a look at it? I'm just going to hold it. No, I'm just going to hold it. Here on Batman the Animated Series, they appropriated Danny Elfman's score.
Which, of course, it's brilliant. How can you not love it? What Shirley Walker ends up doing, though, is pretty magnificent because she doesn't ape his score at all. No. She builds on it and makes it her own. And I always ended really liking dun 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 dun.
The other thing is just an echo of some other Batman.
Because it's majestic and when they do it in Mask of the Phantasm with the choir, it's great. That lady she got a lot of accolades for the show, but her name should be more well known, and I wish she had been able to do the Batman films.
Criminally underused.
Because, I don't like to bash other filmmakers. So I don't want to I don't like the Nolan movie. But those movies don't have a theme.
No, there certainly hasn't been one memorable Batman theme.
Score.
In Batman and Nolan's defense, since the Burton Batman, there hasn't been a memorable superhero score either.
Well, Star Spangled Man for Captain America is pretty catchy.
Okay, all right. Well, that's fair. Have you ever heard the Who's Batman cover? Okay, we're going to listen to that later. Yeah, they do. They have a cover of the 60s song that they dropped in the 60s. Batman's everywhere, man. That was what's cool about, I think on our last podcast I was on, I said that movies aren't cool.
Yeah.
But 1989, Batman was very cool. Prince was Prince had a whole fucking album of it. And it's terrible and it's ridiculous and it's brilliant.
I love that album separately from the film, although I do like hearing it in some of the backgrounds of the scenes. In the opening, they're playing The Future, which you only hear briefly, but that's a fucking great song. I've seen the future and it will be.
Oh yeah, I've seen the future and it will be.
I love that whole album. It gets shit on a lot, but he was right.
I could convince my friend Todd Rowling-Cotter, and I think we were starting high school or the 8th grade or something. It was a talent show, and I'm like, hey, let's dress up like the Joker and Batman and act out the Batman song. And he's, dude, I want to get laid at some point in my life. I was trying to direct even then. I went as the Joker for that Halloween. My aunt made me this gangster ass velvet top coat, the tuxedo coat with the tails.
Yeah.
And I had some pajama pants with my sisters. Man, I was gangster. It was so cool. Had the flower that squirt water and shit. It was the best. All the movies had a cool song in it. That Susie the Banshee song in Batman Returns. That U2 banger from Batman Forever. And the worst Batman movie has the best song. That Smashing Pumpkin song. I remember reading an interview. He's like, why'd you do this movie? He's like, I like Batman comic books and I wrote a song about Batman. That song's actually about Batman. So that's cool. But this episode is great because I love it. It boils down all the characters and as, the Two-Face with his coin, and it's traditional because it ends the way 90% of all Two-Face movie appearances end. Batman fucked with his coin. This is when he pickpocketed the coin off of him. This is the first time I've ever seen the coin damaged on the edge, though.
That's true, because they needed it to be.
They needed to be, because I've got my little replica of the coin in my bedroom still. It doesn't have the bucked up edge. So it's very quintessential, though. He does something with the coin to fuck up Two-Face.
It's part and parcel. Like I said, each of these episodes so perfectly encapsulates each of the characters without having to do it in 22 minutes. Not that any of these stories wouldn't be fine in a 22-minute segment.
Did you notice the penny? After Batman escapes the penny in midair, it lands on the goons, but it don't kill the goons.
Oh, it kills them. That coin slamming down on those guys, they are at least never walking again.
Batman didn't kill those people.
Kumail Nanjiani has this theory that Batman has a different definition of death than the rest of us.
But here's the thing with him and killing. It's like Batman's archenemy isn't the Joker. Batman's archenemy is death.
Batman's archenemy is Bruce Wayne.
Maybe. One of those is keeping him from being Batman forever. Well, that's the thing, though. If he stops being Bruce Wayne, he's going to fall into this trap of just being that guy. And he needs to go out and get laid. I don't like that Zack Snyder had him drink. Batman does not drink. He does not smoke weed. He does meditation. Everything he does is perfect. He only eats lean meats.
Zack Snyder's whole take on Batman is based off of Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns. But in that story, Bruce Wayne has been retired for years and years, and that's why he's drinking.
His Bruce Wayne copes with his parents. I've seen the quote is like, his Bruce Wayne copes with his parents' death, banging women and drinking. And I'm like, no, he copes with his parents' death by being Batman.
He doesn't do Batman halfway.
The thing is, I like Ben Affleck's another actor I think that would have been fine in a better movie because he's actually pretty good in the movie. I don't like what his Batman's up to. I don't like that he's got wanting to kill people and
Branding them.
And whatever. But like when he's goofing off as Bruce Wayne and then he's nice shoes. Oh, that's fucking great. And when he's in the Batcave with Alfred, he's great. And he's even in the suit. And that fight scene is amazing. Yeah. But anyways, this show, on the other hand, he's never off. And this episode shows you how well-rounded and except Batman does all these ridiculous things in these episodes, and it's all believable because the character, it's all part of his, makeup. And, now we get to, and each episode shows you the villain more or less at their core. And of course, now the Joker. That episode, that short, encompasses what the Joker's first gag was, taking over a radio station and telling, I'm going to murder this guy. The Joker takes over TV shows all the time. He does it in the Nolan movies. He does it in
the
Burton
Joker
movies.
The Joker understands the power of media better than any other Batman villain.
Yeah, he's the show business guy.
They've kind of turned the Riddler into that with the latest film, him taking over the broadcast airwaves.
Yeah, but the Riddler, I think, is more about, I like the Riddler with the death traps.
They've gone the extra fucking mile here, giving us a television broadcast that is somehow more consistent than Late Night with the Devil.
But the Joker takes over, the Dark Knight Returns takes over a TV show. The Joker takes over, and then that gets aped in the Joaquin Phoenix Todd Phillips movie. Joker takes over the TV show. Yeah, and there's Harley. And again, Harley Quinn, this character that was supposed to be a one-off. And they liked the design. I'm like, no, let's bring her back. I'm friends with this actress. And that voice and that performance is, toots. It goes from up this to down. And it makes you believe that's not Harley's real voice.
Exactly.
Harley talks like you or me. Okay, she might be from the, Brooklyn or the Bronx or whatever, but she's a friggin', she's a psychiatrist. She's a medical doctor. She's got it. She went to, if she's a psychiatrist, then she's a doctor. Because there's a difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist. A psychologist, you get a PhD and you just do therapy. A psychiatrist really just gives you pills.
Right.
Some of them do the therapy so they know what pills to give you. But for the most part, they just give you pills. She was a clinical psychiatrist that worked in an insane asylum and who was an Olympic alternate or something.
Right.
She was that girl you went to high school with that you never saw because she was always away at some tournament or something. She was this overachieving perfectionist. They don't explore that enough. The last episode of the series, Mad Love, delves right into it. And it's based on a great comic too.
By these guys.
And they finally give you what she's about. Ultimately, she's the star almost of this entire series but you don't care. She's such a delightful character.
And you know what? It doesn't feel anything but natural. I've got kind of a criticism of the fucking Star Wars universe, and I know I'm not the first person to say it, but that fucking cowboy-hatted guy, Dave Filoni, slowly sticking all of his characters into every fucking possible media, cementing his place in the universe. It's like, we get it, man. You didn't create Star Wars, but you're goddamn gonna make sure we remember your name. I never felt that way about Paul Dini or Bruce Timm. They kept building characters, and it just kept happening, and it just kept getting better, and they kept... Any new character they created was equally good as the ones that were already there.
There's also another thing, is that characters that are invented, that are created for outside media, rather than the comic books, always suck.
Right.
Who the fuck is Max Shrek? Max Shrek should have been Black Mask. He should have been, they could have rewritten him as his industrialist, who by the end of it is wearing this black skull mask, because it would have been no, he's just got a stupid haircut. And he's named after a German silent film star that only was in one movie because he was really a vampire, but that's a whole other, that's a whole other thing. And Harley's a character that I should hate, right? Like, that as a devotee of the comics, that I learned how to read on or whatever, and raised me as a father, as played that father figure because of that comic book. She's awesome. I was a kid. I was working at the Warner Brothers studio store, and I worked on the art gallery. And in 1993 or whatever, so one of my first jobs, 94, 95, whatever it was, you know how much Harley shit we sold?
Oh.
The little statues, a couple $100. She was 2 years old, that character, and already a phenomenon. And the reason why is that even though she's the Joker's girlfriend, Harley's not a murderer, really. I'm sure she's killed a bunch of people, but at her heart, she's not evil.
Right.
She's misguided, and she's a lot like Bart Simpson.
Let's be real. She'll feed you to hyenas.
Bart Simpson might the 10-year-old equivalent of.
Right.
Because they're pure id. They're just pure id. Impulse. Harley's going to do it for you.
Speaking of perfect casting, the final segment belongs to the Joker, and you can't get much more perfect casting than this. Mark Hamill.
Mark Hamill's a genius, man. I think he's one of the finest character actors out that, and I think we were robbed of a really delicious movie career from him because, Milos Forman didn't want to cast Luke Skywalker in Amadeus, or everybody just saw Luke Skywalker and didn't want to give him a shot after Star Wars. And I'm like, you watch Star Wars, he's really good at that. Like, he's a spoiled brat in the first one, and by the last one, he's the most unbelievable badass in the galaxy, and you buy him defeating, going up the Emperor, and this little tiny guy who's a little bigger than Michael J. Fox, doing all of this. Because he's a good actor, and you buy that shit. And all we get is Corvette Summer. I mean, come on.
I was excited. Remember Slipstream? Luke Skywalker in a different space outfit with funky blonde hair.
Tim Curry's Joker just didn't cut the mustard for these guys, and then they read, Mark Hamill went in just because he wanted to be a part of it, and he read a character in Heart of Ice. He reads Daggett or whatever. Is it Daggett on this show? Yeah. He reads the antagonist that causes Victor Freeze to become Mr. Freeze. I've heard the Tim Curry. It's not bad. I would have liked to have seen a live action Tim Curry. He would have been dynamic, man. He would have been amazing. He would have gotten the fact that the Joker's a showman, and he would give you a song and dance, and you never know what he's going to do next. And
had he continued in the part, we were going to get a lot of singing episodes.
Yeah, we were going to get a lot of singing Jokers.
Much love to Tim Curry. I mean, we all love Tim Curry.
But you listen to Mark Hamill, and what Mark Hamill does defines what the Joker sounds like, I think. Everybody kind of does an impression of him. Even Heath Ledger, to a certain degree, kind of gets into that little neighborhood, that kind of low, gravelly neighborhood that Mark Hamill sometimes visited. And he voices him like a Looney Tunes character almost other times. Like, he does, every word is a meal to this guy. And like, he's an actor's dream almost. Like, you can just cut loose with it. And the chemistry that he develops with Kevin Conroy over the years is magnificent. They were so good together.
Perfect.
Yeah. Because when I hear Batman in anything, that's the voice I hear is Kevin Conroy's. Obviously, the episode, Batman escapes the Joker's crazy death trap because of Catwoman. And the Joker's all these, I almost got him. But Batman got away. He's like, yeah, but I got Catwoman tied up in a cat food factory downtown, and I'm going to send him a nice bag of cat food tomorrow. I got him.
But then Killer Croc starts talking. So it's Batman disguised as Killer Croc.
This is why cartoons ultimately are the best medium for this kind of shit. There's that reveal. So that's the shot. It's a profile or three-quarter profile on Killer Croc with the swinging overhead lamp swinging off, and in the shadow it becomes Batman. It swings back, it's Killer Croc, and in the shadow it's Batman again.
It's painstaking. It cost money, but they fucking did it because it was absolutely appropriate.
Just spectacular, man. And it turns out rips off his mask and Batman's there, and everybody in the bar is a cop.
My favorite part of this whole thing is that Batman gets his most hated villains to give him information by asking them each to tell a story in which Batman is the hero.
Such a great idea.
That is the equivalent of a Batman wisecrack.
And then, of course, at the end, him and Catwoman are up on the roof. You know, he's got her rescued, and she's trying to get into his pants.
And he's having none of it. And then, ultimately, it's about how Catwoman almost got him.
She almost got him. And ultimately, she gets him. And they're doomed to be on again, off again, on again, off again, until they decide to stop doing what they do for a living.
That is the end of Batman, the animated series Almost Got Him. I think arguably one of the best episodes of the series.
Yeah, it's really good.
This is going to amount to the end of part 1 of our discussion of Batman. We've talked about Almost Got Him, and in our next episode, we're going to be discussing his further adventures in Legends of the Dark Knight, which I cannot wait to talk about. We're going to get really into the nuts and bolts of the different Batman artists and their different styles and the various iterations of Batman through the decades, because that's what Legends of the Dark Knight is all about.
Yeah, everything bends, and they really adapt different looks and different styles, and for God's sakes, Michael Ironside is Dark Knight Returns Batman.
And let's not forget Michael McKean. What are you working on? Where can people find you, Antonio Llapur?
Well, you can find us at my company, Swamp Media Group, at swampmediagroup.com. And you can watch my feature film, Space Detective, over at our sister site, spacedetectivemovie.com. And we're working on a couple shorts that'll be out later this year.
You can find everything I do at weirdingwaymedia.com. I have a couple of shows over there. Dark Destinations, a radio drama I write and produce. And you can hear me on HP's show, Night Mr. Walters, a taxi podcast. Until next time, try to enjoy the daylight. Midnight Viewing, the horror anthology podcast, is a proud member of Weirding Way Media. Our theme song was composed by HP with an assist from Donald Rubenstein and Erica Lindsay. If you want to hear these episodes early and commercial-free, become a patron over at patreon.com/Father Malone. Not only are the episodes up early, but we have extended interviews and bonus podcasts where we spotlight the best episodes of horror anthologies from every series. But if you just like the show and want to help, please share it with your friends and give us a rating on your favorite podcatcher. Together we'll keep journeying through the places that are just as real, but not as brightly lit.